Hey, what's happening, guys? Welcome back to Rule of Two Review, and today I want to go back to a recent conversation I had about third parties and Nintendo. So obviously this is a conversation that a lot of people have had. The reason I'm bringing it up today is in my recent video where I discussed some of the games that might actually launch the Nintendo NX, I had a small part of the conversation where I discussed relevant third-party games hopefully coming out right alongside their PlayStation 4 and Xbox One and PC counterparts on the Nintendo NX, specifically at launch, but of course throughout the life of the system. I think that that's very important. And through that, it got me thinking about what companies and what games from all of these companies might actually be the most important for Nintendo going forward in this period where everyone wonders, is this going to finally be the case and the situation and the system from Nintendo that finally fixes the third-party droughts? So yes, I really am one of those huge die-hard Nintendo fans that still really likes and enjoys a lot of the third-party companies and third-party games. And most of you know me, so I'm sure that you know that. I talk about it all the time, whether it's on the podcast or my own videos, all of these speculation videos about the Nintendo NX that we've all been a part of this last year. I've talked about it many times, and as a diehard Nintendo fan, I do certainly recognize and acknowledge that Nintendo's games, of course, are still the best. They're the reason that they are my favorite company. Nintendo's IPs and their characters and their game development is second to none. They are the best. Their characters and games are the best. And through that, they, of course, are one of, if not the only company that could probably still survive just on their first-party content alone. I have said that numerous times. But I do love my PlayStation, I love my Xbox, I like PC gaming, and through that I love the third-party companies, so I always enjoy having a reason to still bring them back into the conversation. And it's really important right now because we know the NX is right around the corner. We know that with the Wii U, they tried to say, hey, we've got this unprecedented third-party support from Electronic Arts and Ubisoft and all these other companies, and of course we know none of that really panned out, unfortunately. It was very unfortunate. I'm sure Nintendo had a hand in that falling apart. Definitely some of the third-party companies had a hand in that falling apart as well, and it was very, very sad. So with the NX, you know, from our own speculation as gamers and Nintendo fans, from some of the things that Nintendo has said, from some of the things that some of the other companies out there have said, like EA recently and Ubisoft, we all want to believe that this is going to be the time where Nintendo truly brings it, and these third-party companies truly bring it, and we actually get some great third-party content, relevant third-party content, on Nintendo systems again, and it would just remind me of the heyday back in the Nintendo and Super Nintendo days when Nintendo was killing it and all of the best third-party content came out on Nintendo's platforms. We're so far removed from those days, but as a fan of these companies and so many of these games, I wanted to discuss what companies probably would be the most important for Nintendo, and specifically the Nintendo NX going forward. Now, it's just a quick list of a couple of companies that are honestly very obvious. I feel like if any one person was going to put together a list of, oh gee, what of the third-party companies would probably be the most important for the Nintendo NX? I mean, 90% of people would probably have the same handful of companies. So I'm not trying to have any sort of revelatory news or information, but I do want to discuss all of these companies individually very quickly and what games from these companies I think are important and why I think that they could be great for Nintendo and for Nintendo gamers going forward. The first big and obvious one, there's a couple of big and obvious ones, but the first one that I just want to jump on, obviously, is Electronic Arts, and I know that they're such a polarizing company. They're easy to talk bad about, they're easy to make fun of, they're easy to pinpoint and use as a scapegoat company for some of the worst business practices out there, and over the past decade, so much of that is true, you guys, and some of it's even true now, as evidenced by some of the season pass practices that they have that I think are terrible. But honestly, I've said this before, I do still like Electronic Arts overall as a game developer, and some of their properties are super kick-ass, and I love them. I want all of the BioWare stuff. I want Dead Space. I want Mass Effect. I think these games would be so great for Nintendo's console going forward. I'm a sports fan in real life, but I am not a sports gaming fan. However, Madden and FIFA and NHL and NBA, these games are important. They sell extremely well. We know about the rumors of the conversations Nintendo and EA had a couple of months ago where EA was saying, hey, we want you to make bundles of the NX with our sports games. We want you to advertise that our sports games are on your system. If you do that, we're going to work with you and we're going to give you the Maddens and FIFAs and NHLs of the world to help sell your system and sell some of our games. And honestly, you guys, that stuff is really super important. I think I said Dead Space, but just in case I didn't, that's a huge one for me. I really, really would love to see Dead Space come to Nintendo's consoles because I just really love that franchise. Titanfall is an example of a game coming out really soon. Titanfall 2 now, all of a sudden, multi-platform, not Xbox and PC exclusive. Imagine if Titanfall 2 or Titanfall 3, whatever, was going to be coming out on the Nintendo NX. I think that that would be really fantastic. I mean, they just have a wide array of stuff that matters. Not the least of which, you saw this one coming from me, Star Wars. They, for the foreseeable future, are the only game company that can actually develop and publish Star Wars games. And that's what I want in my life. I need it in my veins, Star Wars video games. And I really want to believe that their Battlefront 2 is going to fix the problems that their first Battlefront game had and make up for the fact that they shut down Galaxy in Turmoil, which was the Battlefront game that we wanted. And I would like for that game to be available on the Nintendo NX. I'd like to pick that up on the Nintendo console that's going to exist and support that stuff through that. So obviously, those are some of the main bullet point reasons why Electronic Arts, they're huge for the video game industry, and through that, they are probably the most important company that we should see come back to Nintendo and really, truly work with Nintendo on the NX, bring the next Mass Effect, the next Dragon Age, the sports games, the Star Wars games. These things freaking matter. Another huge one that I don't know if many people would talk about in the same light, to me, is Rockstar. And it's obviously, I always use this as an example, and, you know, Grand Theft Auto makes that big of an impact. If Grand Theft Auto was a series that was available suddenly on Nintendo consoles, you guys, that would be huge. Not only because those games sell like crazy, just look at the sales of Grand Theft Auto 5. It's insane how much this game is still selling. Not only for that reason, but because it also really helps shape an image. Something about Grand Theft Auto specifically could really help repair the negative image that Nintendo has created these last couple of years and couple of generations amongst gamers who aren't super tuned into what Nintendo does and how great their games are. All of a sudden, a Grand Theft Auto series being available tells a lot of other gamers who aren't Nintendo fans, whoa, that's the kind of that's the kind of image I care about. That's the kind of system that I might pay attention to. You get games like Grand Theft Auto on there, oh my gosh, I'm paying attention. There's something about this magnetic pull that that game has, this organic nature about it, of what it creates around it. And I'm not even a huge Grand Theft Auto fan, you guys, just so you know. I'm not trying to like fanboy out. I only think the series is okay. But I do have to admit, it has this ability to create that image that I think Nintendo could really benefit from. And of course, we all want like the Red Dead Redemptions. You know, we know that Red Dead Redemption 2 is probably going to come out sooner. The next Red Dead game, that would be a great game to have on Nintendo's platforms. They do weird one-off games like Bully and things like that. And I think is it Mafia that they did, or is it Godfather? There's some, I can't remember, you guys. Oh, well, they did L.A. Noire. There's a good example. When they do games like Bully and L.A. Noire, these random one-off games that could become new franchises, we want those to also come to Nintendo's platform. So what Rockstar does is the kind of thing that creates the image Nintendo should want to have back for their system and for their gamers. It's really, really important, I think. And honestly, Rockstar, again, I'm not a huge fan of their games, but their quality is just out of this world. They are one of the best developers out there in terms of game production, software production. They really are that fantastic, so we shouldn't count them out. Rockstar really would matter to Nintendo. Ubisoft is an obvious one, and Ubisoft is an interesting one because they've supported Nintendo so many times. They supported the Wii very, very heavily. Early on, they supported the Wii U very heavily as well, and I have to say, some of my favorite games actually on the Wii U are Ubisoft games, Rayman Legends and Zombie U among them. So they have a history of working with Nintendo. They've kind of hinted through the Just Dance announcement that they might be working with Nintendo on the NX again. I would love to see Steep and Watch Dogs and, you know, future Division titles and things like this actually come down. Is it For Honor, I think, is a Ubisoft game. If stuff like that came out on the Nintendo NX, I think that would be really great, guys. And because of the games Ubisoft makes, they reach so many different gamers, and when they're on top of their shit, they make great games. When they make a good Assassin's Creed game, they make a great Assassin's Creed game. When they make a bad Assassin's Creed game, like Assassin's Creed Unity, they make a really bad one. So they can kind of have a fluctuating quality. But more often than not, I think they do pretty well, despite the fact that they've done and said some really crappy things in the past. Not to mention future Rayman titles. I want those on my Nintendo platform. Those are the kind of games that could do gangbusters on Nintendo platforms. And most importantly, if my dream title actually comes true and we get a Beyond Good and Evil 2, I want to see that on a Nintendo platform. It's got to happen. So those are some of the big and obvious ones. And then, there's another quick list of things that I think would be really important. Sega has always worked with Nintendo, so really that would just be a case of Sega continuing to work with Nintendo, and I think we're obviously going to get that. I mean, hey, they just announced the next Sonic game coming out for the NX, so that's great news there. Square is an obvious one. We want that Japanese company to start working with Nintendo. Hey, they just confirmed Dragon Quest XI along with Dragon Quest X. Maybe we get a Final Fantasy 15 or the Final Fantasy 7 remake. If all of these Square titles start coming out on Nintendo's platforms, that would be great. And every once in a while, Square publishes a really cool, action game, and they used to deal with, I think Tomb Raider for a while. So if Square starts working with Nintendo as the Japanese company that they are, and they use that to help repair some of the Japanese relations, really good stuff happening there. Activision, obvious one because of Call of Duty, but I want to take Activision a step further and also add Blizzard into the mix because I love Blizzard as an old school PC gamer and a huge fan of Diablo and a pretty big fan of StarCraft. And the fact that, Blizzard even just released Overwatch on consoles and it's doing so fantastically well, I would like to see if Blizzard really continues to work on consoles. If we get Blizzard thrown in with Activision working on Nintendo platforms, that gets me really excited. So that's a huge important aspect that people don't think about. Bungie, I want to bring up just because I'm a big fan of Destiny, and Destiny is proving to potentially be a very important evergreen title for this generation and for these consoles. So if future Bungie installments, future Destiny installments, and maybe even Destiny 2, and maybe even another new IP from Bungie hit the scene, we're going to want those games on Nintendo's platforms, you guys. They really, really will make a difference. And the last really obvious one that I want to bring up is Capcom. And I know Capcom is polarizing just like Electronic Arts is. But you guys, I'm a huge Resident Evil fan. I'm a huge Street Fighter fan. I know Street Fighter V was just a big old mess, but I feel like... And I'm a huge Monster Hunter fan. There's so many great things that Capcom has available to them, and every once in a while they knock it out of the park. And if anything, just for Resident Evil alone, because I'm a Resident Evil fanboy, I want to see them come back to true form, and I want to see them start working with Nintendo and releasing some of their good titles, not their crappy ones, but their good titles on Nintendo's platforms. Because when Capcom, they just own so many important franchises that if they decide to ever start being the great Capcom that we used to know in the future, we want to know that they're going to release the games that they're going to start making at that time on Nintendo's platform. So I think it's important to throw Capcom into the mix there too. So anyway, this video and this topic was really just an excuse for me to spitball some of my favorite games from these companies that I want to see come out on the Nintendo NX and for Nintendo in the future, as well as the fact that honestly a lot of these games that even though I don't like them really will be important to Nintendo going forward. A lot of Nintendo fans may want to just close their eyes and just bury their head in the sand and pretend like, oh, this stuff doesn't matter. It's only Nintendo's games that matter and Nintendo this and Nintendo that. And like I said, I'm a diehard Nintendo fan too, you guys. And I do admit that Nintendo could make it happen, but they would just probably barely be surviving and getting by. And they really need to do better at this kind of stuff. And I really think it's okay, even as a diehard Nintendo fan, you guys, it's okay to admit that, hey, third-party games and third-party companies in today's industry, they matter. Gamers want them. And honestly, I've said this before, even as a diehard Nintendo fan, I am happy and proud to admit that still some of the best stuff happening in the industry today is not made by Nintendo. And I think that you're a better gamer if you could acknowledge that. Even if you're like a PlayStation fan and you don't like Sony and Microsoft, you still have to admit that some of the best stuff is made not by Sony and not by Naughty Dog. Same with Microsoft, same with PC, same with everybody. If you're just too focused on one company and one machine, you may still get some great gaming opportunities and experiences, but you're missing the full breadth of what's happening, and you need context. If anything, as a Nintendo fan, you need the third-party companies and what's happening in the industry around you to give you context to maybe why Nintendo's games are so great. Not to mention, you don't want to miss out on when a really great game like a Tomb Raider, like a Final Fantasy, like a Resident Evil or a Destiny, or a Grand Theft Auto or whatever, when these games come out, you don't want to miss them. You need to color your gaming palette. That's a phrase that I use a lot. I believe in it. It's a philosophy that's important to me, and I think it's important for a lot of people to pay attention to. So, I mean, I love Nintendo games as much as the next guy, you guys, but these companies and these games really are awesome sometimes, and I want to see them come back to Nintendo and shine on the Nintendo NX and help make Nintendo a better company, the NX more successful, and maybe make these companies and their games that much better for working with Nintendo. So that's my dream, and this was my little random topic about third parties coming to Nintendo NX. What companies matter? What games matter? What do you guys think about the companies and games that I brought up? Do you think that this is important to Nintendo and the NX like I do, or do you think that, hey, I'm totally batshit crazy, Nintendo is completely fine and well off without them? I think that's definitely not the case, but if you do think that's the case, discuss why you think so below. Thanks, of course, as always, for tuning in, guys. This is Rob of Live to Review, and I will catch you next time on the next video.